Well, let's bring you some analysis on this now. We are joined by the director of the Horn Institute Kenya, Dr. Hassan Khannenje, who is also a practitioner specializing in conflict analysis and resolution. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Khannenje. Of course, the first thing that we must note is that Kenya has rejected the ICJ's decision. So where to from here, particularly as far as enforcement is concerned?
Yeah, the challenge with international law is there's, especially the one that comes from the ICJ, there is no credible enforcement mechanism. It doesn't have the tool to enforce it, and therefore its implementation is largely going to be based on the willingness of the parties in question to do that, absent, of course, of a Security Council resolution that forces the parties to do it, is going to be dependent just on the willingness of the two parties in question to abide by the ruling, and in which case Kenya has rejected recognition of that ruling.
What Kenya is open to doing, though, is negotiating. Somalia, on the other hand, has not expressed that sentiment. What role do you think the African Union, perhaps, or other regional bodies can play in trying to mediate the dispute between the two countries?
I think Kenya's preference for a negotiated solution, part of it is premised on the fact that traditionally issues when it comes to maritime borders, as well as even continental borders, ultimately they tend to be decided through negotiations, especially when they touch on critical national interests of sovereignty or critical resources. And within the continent, there is an African Union border mechanism. It's called African Union Border Program that actually helps in the delineation, the limitation of borders, and helps states navigate the kind of challenges that are created by border issues. But this can also be done through, of course, the existing, IGAD framework to be supported, perhaps by the United Nations, in ensuring that there is a regional and bilateral or rather resolution to the conflict. Now, the challenge, of course, of what is maybe perceived as an external imposition of borders is that the states, and especially what we have seen already, that Nairobi has not only been reluctant but has outright rejected the ruling, is that it can perpetuate and prolong the kind of dispute that exists, and therefore destabilize the region even further. Now, neither of the countries is going to be in a position to exploit whatever resources that could be in the disputed territory. And so I think a framework from the African Union can be exploited to ensure that perhaps a solution is arrived at either bilaterally or regionally.
And what about the African Union's position then on safeguarding the stability and security of its member states in this regard, particularly as there are allegations that very powerful foreign interests may be meddling or even fueling this dispute?
Unfortunately, in recent years, the Horn of Africa region in particular has become a theater of global geopolitics. And in the current maritime dispute, there is increasingly the presence of not only Western interests in particular, but also Western corporations that have played a part in actually fueling the dispute that we are seeing, in as much as they are contributing to, of course, other disputes within the region. And so it is going to be, I think, very important that there is an African mechanism in the way in which they're going to respond to this. Now, increasingly, though, both the Western interests in particular and Western corporations, their interests will not be achieved, especially with regard to the disputed area, if the dispute is going to continue. And so I think it's the best interest of everybody concerned to perhaps urge the parties to try and negotiate a settlement that is going to allow for exploitation of those resources, but also for the management of the maritime activity that is expected to take place going forward.
Well, thank you for that analysis.